We are going to have some word problems that are going to involve quadratics, which I know word problems can kind of be tricky, but there are only two different types that you guys are going to have to deal with. I'm going to show you how to do both types, and then those are the kinds that'll end up being on your test, okay? There will also be one of each type on your review that we're going to go through in class tomorrow. So you'll see this a couple times before you actually take your test. But for quadratic applications, typically what we're dealing with are things where a real life situation that would create some kind of parabola if you were to graph it. So for instance, like, I understand this is not going to be a perfectly symmetrical upside down parabola, but if somebody is shooting a basketball or throwing a ball in the air, most of the time it's not going to follow this perfectly shaped parabola, but it would be in that kind of, it would go up, it would reach a max height, and then it would come back down. Okay. Same thing if somebody is like diving off of a diving board. So those are the types of problems that you guys are going to end up seeing when it deals with a word problem. And if you look down here at the bottom, they are just showing you that here is what our quadratics have been looking like. Normally this says y equals, but this is just function notation. But you guys typically see something like 2x squared plus 4x minus 9. So you have three terms, and you have an x and a y. The x is the input, the y is the output. When you start seeing these quadratics today in the word problems, you're going to see h's and t's. Well, h stands for height, t stands for time. So if you notice, t is in the same spot that x normally is, right? So our time is the x coordinate, or the x value, it's the same thing. And then wherever you see the height, that's the same thing as having like y equals. So they're interchangeable. Okay. Go ahead and write time here and write height here. So t stands for time in all of these problems, and h stands for height. And then before we even turn the page, what I'd like you guys to do is write in this blank section, just draw, like make a sketch of an upside down parabola. Oh, sorry. In this section, make a sketch of an upside down parabola. And if we had just graphed this, we would have a vertex up here at the top, right? That would be like the maximum height that it could reach. Well, the same thing is true if you're talking about one of these problems. You know, whatever we're throwing, or if somebody's diving, they would start going up and their height would increase until they reach a max height, and then it would turn back down and go, it would decrease. So if this is our vertex, in the past, we have written our vertex as x comma y. It's always been an ordered pair. But since we're not using x's and y's now, what letter do we use for x? T. You guys, it's right down here. Your x is your time, and your y is your height. Okay? So what that means is your x coordinate, which is your time, that's how long it takes to get to the maximum height. Okay? That is really important to understand, because once we solve for t, that t represents the amount of time it took to get to the max height. And then the h over here is like what that height actually is. How did we find the x coordinate of our vertex when our parabola was in standard form? What was that tiny little formula that we used to find the x coordinate? X equals what over what? You just did this last week. It's even on your reference sheet. Negative b over 2a. So to find our x coordinate of our vertex, we would find the axis of symmetry. Remember doing that? And your axis of symmetry is this formula. And if x is the same thing as t, if they ask you in one of these problems, how long will it take to get to the top, wouldn't we still just use the same formula if t and x are the same thing? Okay, so you guys are going to be using this axis of symmetry formula today to find time. Time to get to the max height. Use this formula to find the time it takes to get to max height. Bless you. Yeah, that class has a lot of math in it. And then once you guys have that written down, go ahead and turn the page, because we're going to do a couple of word problems together, so you guys you'll keep seeing that used. But I just wanted you to start to picture in your head what this potentially could look like. Okay? So, the time it takes to get to the top. So if you ever see a question that says, how long will it take to reach the max height, you would use that little formula. Okay? All right, so on the next page, here's our first example. It says a ball is thrown into the air. The path of the ball is represented by the following equation. Okay, so here's the quadratic that we're going to use. Again, they're using t and h, but it's the same thing as x and y. H is the height, t is the time. So part A wants to know how long, nope, it does not. It says, what is the height of the ball? So they want you to find h after 1 second. So what have they just given us? They gave us the t. And if they give you the t, isn't that just a plug and chug? Like, we will simply plug in a 1 wherever we see the letter t. It's just like when you guys knew x before and you had to find y, didn't you just plug it in? Okay, it's the same thing. So we would rewrite this equation, h equals -16, but then instead of putting the letter t, we're going to replace it with a 1. So you have -16 times 1 squared, and keep going, plus 96, and then instead of putting t, what are we putting again? A 1, and then plus 200. So I rewrote this, plugging in a 1 wherever I saw the letter t. And now you guys pick up those calculators. You all should be doing this. And you should just type in this entire thing. You don't have to do it in pieces. Type out the whole thing. -16, parentheses, 1 squared, and so on. $280. And I don't care if they don't tell us. We're going to always put feet. That's going to be our unit of measure. So the height after 1 second is 280 feet. Okay, so the good thing is when they're asking you for height after so many seconds, it's just plug and chug. That's an easy part. That should always be the easiest 2 points, is when they give you a time to plug in. Now the second one, this does not say max height. So this one just says how long will it take. So they're wanting time. They want us to find t. But they tell us that the height is 88 feet. So we already know what height they want us to use. So where would I plug in that 88? I'm going to plug it in where the h is this time. So we're going to do 88 equals, and now t is going to stay in the equation. So -16t squared plus 96t plus 200. And don't confuse your plus signs with t's. It's kind of a pain, but. Now you guys know that in order to solve a quadratic, doesn't this have to be set equal to 0? This is not set equal to 0. You guys also know I can't stand to have this negative sign in front of my x squared term or t squared term, but just bear with me because I'm going to do something to get rid of this negative sign after we move this over, okay? So let's move our 88 over. How would I move it? Go ahead and subtract 88 from the left, and then you're going to subtract 88 all the way down there from that 200. So left and right. So you have 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 96t, and then what's 200 minus 88? 112. 112, yeah. Don't do that in your head. You guys type that in. And if I told you guys right now, all right, let's try to do an asterisk problem. Just imagine, like, taking this times this is going to be huge. So I would never have you do an asterisk problem with the way it's written. Every single time we do one of these problems. And this is just good to know for the future. See this negative 16 here? Wouldn't it be easier if this just said t squared instead of negative 16t squared? Wouldn't it just be easier? It would. It would be easier to factor. So why don't you guys see if you can divide all of those terms by negative 16? Hey, guess what? You can. We're going to do a GCF. We are going to divide all three terms by negative 16 because I don't want that negative 16 there if I don't have to have it there. What would be left out of that first term? Just what? The t squared? Okay. Now the other two pieces, like you guys are going to actually have to do the division there. You're going to have to figure out what 96 divided by negative 16 is. Negative 6t. And then you would take 112 divided by negative 16. Forgot your T on that 6. There you go. And then close your parentheses. Now look, doesn't this, because I bet most of you right now could put the negative 7 and the negative 6 in an asterisk and get it to factor. It's way easier if we get rid of that negative 16. All of these problems, when there's a negative 16 out front, take it out. Divide everything by that negative 16. It will work every time. Okay, and now let's go ahead and do the asterisk. We've got negative 7 up top, negative 6 on the bottom. And now we just have ones because we got rid of that negative 16. So two numbers that would multiply together and would give you negative 7, but would add together to give you negative 6. There's only one way to make 7, people. 1 and 7. Which one is the negative? The 7, because there are more negatives. There have to be more negatives if the sum of them is negative. All right, so two sets of parentheses. We have t plus 1 times t minus 7. Can you guys go to your two answers from there? Yep. So this t would be negative 1, and this t would be positive 7. Yep. This is the point where you would normally... No, what I'm telling you is normally you would separate them and set each one equal to 0. Oh, okay. That's how you usually do it because you did it on your do now today. I just typically go straight to my two answers. So if you need to show it, make sure you put t plus 1 equals 0, and then t minus 7 equals 0. And you would just solve each of those. Yep, that's how I got my -1. Now, before we move on, I need you guys to think for a second. On your do now today, did it matter whether our answers were positive or negative? No, it didn't matter because we were just solving a random quadratic. But now that this is a word problem, your answers have to make sense. If they don't make sense, you can't say it's one of your answers. Will time ever be negative? No. So if you guys get two answers and one of them is negative, it's what we call extraneous, meaning it's like an extra answer that technically works for the quadratic itself, but it does not work for the word problem. Okay, so all I do is I just cross that one out. -1 does not make sense in, like, for this specific problem. If I had just given you this random quadratic on your do now, you would have left both of those. But a time that's negative doesn't make sense. So our only answer here that makes sense is 7 seconds. So it would take 7 seconds to reach a height of 88 feet. Huh?
Isn't that the way we could have figured that out? Through ICP. It's a formula for that.
Maybe. Maybe. I don't know if it would have gone with this, but
Probably not. I think it's distance.
yeah, you're thinking distance equals rate times time. DRT, it's the dirt formula. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to do another problem down here at the bottom. Now this is more like the ones that you will see. There are going to be different pieces and actually, yeah, no, this is good. The first two pieces go kind of together because the first question is, how long will it take the diver to reach max height? And then it asks for the max height. Okay, so let's read this. It says a diver jumps off a diving board. The path of the diver is represented by this equation. First question, how long will it take the diver to reach max height? So again, we're dealing with this, and we have time and height for our vertex. This is what we are solving for in part A. So if we are finding the x coordinate of our vertex, that is when you guys use what formula? Yeah, so technically it's x equals, but because we're dealing with time, I'm putting t equals. They are the same. Okay, so look at your original equation. Which of those numbers is B? Which one is B? 16. So I'd make it its opposite. So I would write -16 up top. And on the bottom, we're doing 2 times A. What was A? -16. Sure hope you guys are writing this stuff down and paying attention. Okay, so you have to multiply out the bottom first. So what's 2 times -16? -32. Yeah, don't put your letters in there.
Yeah.
Get rid of those T's. It's just the numbers. Yeah. So if you have -16 divided by -32, type it in. That's a fraction, you guys. You should have a decimal as your answer. 0.5, and this is seconds. I mean, just think about what you're finding here. They want to know how long it takes somebody when they're jumping to reach their max height. I mean, if you guys jump, are you going to be in the air all that long before you start coming back down? No, none of you are levitating, okay? So if you jump, gravity is going to pull you back down real fast. So taking half of a second to reach your max height, that makes sense because none of us can jump and stay in the air, okay, for very long. Anyway, all right, then these two kind of go hand in hand because now Now that we know how long it takes to get to the top, how do we find height every single time? How do you find the height if you know the time? You do plug and chug. Yep. We are going to plug in 0.5 everywhere you see the letter T. So H equals -16, and then in parentheses you'd have 0.5 because we're going to square it. Then plus 16 times another 0.5 plus 192. You should get 196 feet. $196. Yep. Okay. Then the last question, it's asking for time again because it says how long will it take. So they want us to solve for T again, but this time they've actually given us the height because it says how long will it take for the diver to reach the water. Well, you guys, when they reach the water, what's their height? 0, right? So they are telling you to go ahead and set the original quadratic, that -16t squared plus 16t plus 192. They're telling you to set that equal to 0. So since it's already set equal to 0, we're ready to factor it, aren't we? We don't have to move anything. However, I don't like -16 out front, so what am I going to do with it? We're going to get rid of it by factoring it out. So you guys have to start doing some division for me. You're going to divide all three terms by -16 and put what's left over in those parentheses. So t squared, then what? Minus 1t. Minus what? 12. Yep. That's dividing everything by -16. And now that that -16 is gone, we have much easier numbers right here. We've got a -12 and a -1 that's going into the asterisk. If you didn't love asterisk problems before, you better love them now. Every single unit you will be doing some asterisk problems. For the rest of it, yeah. That's the practice that goes with it, and that's work on as much of this as you can, and then I'll give you guys about 30 minutes to work on it tomorrow during class before I go over it. Okay, what are you guys getting for -12 and -1? What two factors? No, because they have to have a difference of 1. It should be the 3 and the 4. 3 and 4. 3 times 4 is 12.
Oh.
Which one's negative? The 4? Yep. So we have t plus 3 and t minus 4. Now, technically, this -16 is still out front, but that -16 doesn't affect my two answers for t. Which one's the one that makes sense for our problem?
4.
Wouldn't this one become a positive 4 seconds? That one makes sense. This one over here would be negative 3, which does not make sense because time is not negative. Now, I always have people ask me, will there be a time when both of these are positive? Yes, because think about it. If it was that problem, bless you, if it was that problem where it said, how long does it take to reach 88 feet? Think about it. Something starts going up, it'll hit 88 feet going up, and then couldn't it also hit 88 feet coming back down? Yeah, so like before, maybe max height is like 120 feet. So on the way up, it hits 88 maybe after like 2 seconds. And then maybe 2 seconds later at the 4-second mark, it's coming back down and hits 88 feet again. So sometimes you could get two positives and you would just leave them both. The only time you have to cross one out is when it's negative or 0, because time's not going to be 0 either. It's going to take some time to get wherever it's telling you to go. Okay? Are we okay? Yeah. Okay. You'll only have one like that on your test. Okay? Now there is one like this profit problem. So I'm not going to do this population example. We are just going to skip down to this profit example, and this is going to be our last bit of the notes, and then we'll move on. Okay? Let's read about profit. It says an ice cream company varies the prices of its pint containers to maximize profit. They give us this function, okay? So the profit is negative 80x squared plus 480x minus 570. It says that's the model for the company's profit in thousands of dollars, where X is the price of a pint of ice cream in dollars, okay? So X, and then even though this is a P, it's Y. So we're plugging something in for X. We're getting this to come out. First question, what price will the company receive max profit? Okay, well, you guys think about it. Max profit is no different than saying like max height in the last problems. So if we were looking for max height, we had to know the X first, right? And in this case, isn't the X the price of a pint of ice cream? So in order to find the price of the ice cream, guess what little formula we use? The axis is symmetry. Yep, that negative b over 2a. When you're looking for X, we're going to use the axis of symmetry. Okay, so what is the opposite of the b term? Negative 480 over 2 times a, and what was a? Negative 80. Multiply out the bottom before you do your division. You should get negative 160. And then once you do your division, remember we're solving for the cost of a pint of ice cream. So I just threw a dollar sign on there, and what is it? 3. $3. Okay. Now, if they want the max profit, aren't they telling us to solve for P now? They're telling us solve for P, and we know what X is, so isn't that just plug and chug? Plug and chug. We know X. They want us to find P. So we are going to take negative 80. We're going to plug in the 3 for X squared. Plus 480 times 3 minus 570. And then whenever you guys get that whole thing typed in, tell me what you get, and keep in mind that they told us in the word problem This P represents thousands of dollars. So if you get an answer of 10, it is 10,000. The answer is not 10, by the way. I bet you didn't square your 2 or your 3. 150? Are we getting 150? What did you say you got? Okay, so did you remember to put your negative sign out front? Okay, that's probably where you got yours. And then you had an answer of 63 because you forgot to square. Okay, so all those little things are super important. And so you should have come up with 150. And because it said it was measured in thousands of dollars, it is 150,000. Now, obviously, I could just throw 3 zeros on there. That would be the max profit. So it's no different than finding axis of symmetry or time and then doing a plug and chug to find your height. Okay, it's just profit and cost. It's a little bit different that time, but the process is still the same as what we were doing on the previous problems. Then I think that's it, right? Yep, there's nothing on the back. Okay, that's the end of that set of notes.